Dr. Berg here. I'm back again with another video on gut health. Today we're going to talk about the 8 mistakes that people make with their gut. Listen, I've made every mistake in the book when it comes down to gut health. Literally for, I'd say 12 to 15 years, I had a permanent bloating, painful gut. So I'm going to share some things with you that are going to really help you. Let's start with number 1, trying to fix your gut with fiber. This is probably the worst thing that you could possibly do for your gut, yet it's the thing that people will tell you to do. And another name for fiber is a prebiotic, because prebiotics are supposed to feed the probiotics, which are your microbes. Now, I want to give you some more information about this fiber. Fiber has a potential to feed the wrong microbes. But why is it that we bloat so much when we consume too much fiber? Well, it all depends on what's happening with your gut. If your gut is damaged, consuming fiber is like taking sandpaper to an open wound. It's not very good. You're going to get gas, you're going to get more inflammation. If your gut is healthy, which is very rare, you can tolerate more fiber. And if you have a problem with it, maybe you want to have less fiber. Maybe you want to consume more cooked fiber, steamed or cooked vegetables. Okay, that's easier to digest. Or fermented fiber, as in sauerkraut or kimchi. The more inflammation you have in your gut, the more you need to do carnivore. And carnivore is a great thing to eliminate all this fiber and these extra things that are irritating your gut. And just one of the cool things about carnivore is it can help increase your glutamine. Glutamine is a healing amino acid for your gut. And then another healing thing that you can do for the gut is zinc carnosine. This is really good for ulcers. Fasting is essential. Intermittent fasting, no more snacks, and also periodic prolonged fasting. Let your system have a chance to rest and heal. The amount of stress that the digestive system gets by eating constantly is so bad. Snacking is one of the worst things you can do for your digestive system, and this is why fasting can greatly help you. Butyrate is also something good for the microbes. You can get that from butter. And this is just another way to get food for your colon cells. Colon cells do eat fiber and turn that into a version of this right here. Now, I'm not just saying to dump a lot of butter into your body, but don't be afraid to have some of it. It could actually help you for your gut. Let's talk about SIBO for a second. 40% of the population has small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. There's a great thing you could do. I interviewed Dr. William Davis, who came up with this, but you're basically taking this microbe, L. reuteri, in a yogurt maker, and then you actually make your own high concentrated microbe, and that gets rid of the bad guys. So it helps reduce SIBO, but it also does other things like increase your oxytocin that lowers your stress. It also increases your social capacity, like you're going to be more social. It's pretty wild. The other thing is you want to increase your stomach acid to kill off microbes from your food. Betaine hydrochloride is what I recommend for any type of acid reflux, bloating, and then also I recommend if you have any gallbladder issues, you want to take a purified bile salt after you eat, which by the way, will go in there and help kill off some of the bacteria in here. But I also recommend on an empty stomach, TUDCA. Take 2 in the morning, in the evening. It will go in there and help reduce SIBO with the help of this as well, with the help of fasting, very important. Do not snack. Do not consume any fiber. The fiber is going to add more fermentation because those microbes are fermenting fiber and is turning fiber into gas. There's a couple other points I want to tell you about the gut microbiome. You want to actually eat for your microbes. You want to take care of your microbes. One of the things they love is polyphenols, okay? These are plant-based chemicals in things like chocolate, of course, without the sugar, berries, they're in coffee, they're in cacao, avocado might be a good way to get your polyphenols, or even extra virgin olive oil. Another really good hack would be sauerkraut juice, okay? So you don't have the fiber, but you just drink a little of the juice. That's like some serious probiotics, and that'll really help you. Also, there's kefir as a good probiotic that's better than yogurt. Another point about skin issues. A lot of skin issues will clear up when you fix the gut because your microbes are not just in the gut, they're all over your body. Last interesting point is the sun. Believe it or not, the sun, not just the vitamin D, but the infrared spectrum, the ultraviolet, actually help your gut microbiome. There's some research on it now. So you will find that your gut microbiome will be happy when you get more sun, not to mention your eyes, not to mention melatonin in the cells will start increasing, so your sleep cycles will be better. And the absolute worst fiber in the world is this thing right here, whole grains. Because whole grains, and I'm mainly talking about the big one called wheat, is very different than the wheat 1,000 years ago, the ancient wheat. Nowadays, we have something called modern wheat. And modern wheat is a completely different animal, high in a type of protein called gluten that is nearly impossible to digest. And then in that fiber, in the wheat, called bran, you have anti-nutrients like phytate or phytic acid, which blocks your ability to absorb zinc, iron, magnesium. It blocks calcium. Not to mention, it also has things like oxalates, which create problems for your kidney and your gut and your joints. And then, of course, this breaks down to sugar pretty quick, creating a blood sugar spike. Let's go to number 2, typical probiotics or yogurt. When you go to the store and buy probiotics, a lot of times the amount of probiotics in that bottle are so small, it's not going to create really any major difference in your gut. And then what we do is we take yogurt, right? Thinking that we're going to get all this good bacteria in our gut. Well, most yogurt that you buy commercially is low fat, which you never want to do low fat yogurt. It's filled with added sugar, maltodextrin, starches. Now, if you get a plain yogurt, grass-fed or organic, that's really good. Even though some of those microbes never really reseed your gut, they can act for food for your microbes to a certain degree. If you have something called grass-fed kefir, that's a lot better. Number 3, colon cleansing, where you detoxify all this waste. It sounds superficially like a good thing. I'm going to clean all this waste out and I'm going to feel clean. But what's happening is you're getting rid of all the friendly bacteria and you have to get those microbes back. Sometimes you're doing this colon hydrotherapy and then you end up with constipation and other problems. And this is why I don't recommend a lot of detoxing unless you have something that you really need to detox. But generally speaking, you got to get to the root of it and actually work on your diet, because your foods in your diet can actually help your liver naturally detoxify poisons through the liver. Number 4, antibiotics. Now, I'm not telling you not to take an antibiotic, but you just have to be cautious about antibiotics because they can mess you up. If someone tells you that your microbiome is going to come back to where it was, they're lying to you because it never does. You'll never have the pattern of microbes that you once had after you take an antibiotic. And I used to take a lot of antibiotics over and over and over and over at the first sign of some type of sickness. Realize antibiotics only get rid of bacterial infections. They don't touch viral infections. And antibiotics don't ever kill everything. A lot of it they do, but then those microbes that survive start to become very resistant and they become superbugs. And they actually pass on this information to other microbes to the point where these antibiotics at one time, when they worked, will no longer work again. This is a slippery slope. Anytime you do get an antibiotic, make sure you're also at the same time taking some probiotic to put back these microbes. Now, at first, someone's going to say, oh yeah, well, you don't want to put back these microbes because you have an infection. Well, you're not putting back pathogens. You're putting back friendly bacteria. Don't we want friendly bacteria? When you kill off your bacteria, you're killing off both the good guys and the bad guys. And that's the problem. It's not selective just to the bad guys. So be cautious about this. Let's talk about number 5, antacids. When you have acid reflux, most of the time that means you don't have enough acid. And this messes up the valve on the top of the stomach. The valve starts becoming leaky and it opens up and the acid comes back up. And then you're thinking, oh my gosh, I have too much acid. No, you have a valve problem. And now we're treating the wrong problem. We're making your stomach acids less acid. So now the next time you eat, it's the same or worse. And over time, it gets weaker and weaker and weaker to the point where now you have a lot of problems digesting food because we need this strong acid in your stomach. The normal acid pH in your stomach should be between 1 and 3. That's like battery acid. But that's what we need to actually digest our protein. That's what we need to kill off microbes. That's what we need to absorb minerals. And so then if you don't have enough acid, what's going to happen is that undigested food at the stomach level is going to end up in the small intestine undigested. And now the small intestine is going to work harder to digest it. And now we're going to get all sorts of issues with bloating, constipation, diarrhea. And so this is another thing that I highly recommend you find an alternative. But again, check with your doctor before implementing any of the information. Number 6, low-fat diets. Low-fat diets are not good for your digestion because your gallbladder is triggered by fat. And if you don't have that trigger to the gallbladder, you produce less bile. That bile is there to help digest fat, to break it down to the point where the enzymes from the pancreas can then take over and really break it down into small particles. So you can absorb the healthy parts of fat, like the fat-soluble vitamins and the omega-3 fatty acids. And if you don't have enough bile, you'll tend to have either constipation or you won't get this really important function of killing off the microbes in the small intestine. The small intestine is where you don't want a lot of microbes. The large intestine is where you have the majority of microbes. And so bile is like a detergent that keeps the bacteria out of the small intestine. And then the bile goes all the way down this tube and then it gets recycled back up to the liver. When you go on a low-fat diet, we have less bile to do that action. So when you're on an antacid or you have less stomach acid, we don't have the triggering system of the gallbladder too. So both the acid in the stomach and sufficient fat for the gallbladder is needed to allow a good digestion, because if there's too much bacteria in your small intestine, you will develop something called small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. You're just going to be like bloated all the time. You take a goat, their whole digestive system ferments. Okay, this is why they have these big guts. One of our small goats that we got, I thought there was a problem because the stomach was completely distended. I drove an hour and a half to the veterinarian to show this vet that, oh my gosh, we have this problem with this small goat. And he's like, oh, that's normal. That's called fermentation. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, that's what happens in humans. They get this huge gut bloat because they have fermentation in the wrong place. Number 7, a balanced diet. What does the balanced diet mean? To some people, it'll mean, well, just have a little bit of everything. That is the worst advice because typically they're going to go higher in carbohydrates. Too many carbohydrates feed the bad bacteria and they will create bloating. If you lower your carbohydrates from the typical 45 to 65% of someone's calories being carbohydrates down to maybe 10%, your digestion is going to be so much better. And lastly, superfood shakes. I used to recommend kale and fruit shakes. If you ask an average person, what are some superfoods? They're going to say kale, spinach, berries, and then they make the shake. About 3 to 4 minutes later, they're bloated. Why? Because you're overloading the small intestine with fiber. But just so you know, I've upgraded my information and my new superfood is actually red meat. And I think you've already know why, because I've already talked about it. On that note, there's a lot more you need to know about your digestive system, and I created this very detailed video that can greatly help you, and I put it up right here. Check it out.